Good afternoon. I'm Mayor Jim Langfelder in Springfield, Illinois. Welcome to our Facebook Live for September 9th. We appreciate you joining us. As a recap, last week we focused on services and how we try to deliver those through mainly our Office of Public Works and our City Water, Light and Power, and continue to take questions with regards to services specifically on utility cutoffs. We have sent out disconnection notices. Even though the governor's order only pertained to private sector utilities, the for-profit utilities, CWLP, as under my direction, City Council, provided free, or not free, but did not do disconnections during this pandemic. So it's a time where people continue to make their payments. It was always the responsibility of the homeowner or the business owner to do that. And we move forward in that direction. And so disconnection notice have gone out to individuals that may not have been caught up on their bills. And what we encourage anybody to do if they did receive those notices is to call 789-2030. That's CWLP, and they'll work with you if you need to be put on a payment plan, spread those costs out, as well as maybe identifying possible resources to help pay for your utility bill. Because the last thing we want to do is have someone disconnected with regards to electricity or water. So it's important that we continue to provide those services, but we need some support with regards to residents. If you are having difficulty, be sure to call again CWLP at 789-2030 and work with us to help make sure that we can make ends meet. With regards to today's activities, we're going to discuss the REL, but before we do, just a reminder with the coronavirus, that's how these Facebook Lives started, was to make sure that we keep in check the pandemic, try to stop the spread as much as possible. So it's important when you're out and you cannot keep your social distance, or if you're in public buildings, or if you're going out to eat at a restaurant, or you're going to a bar or a store, you should wear your face coverings and do it properly where it covers your nose and your mouth. You can't wear it like this, or a chin guard, as they say, put it over your entire nose and mouth. That way it keeps yourself protected as well as others, because again, we do not know, the virus, it's invisible. We don't have a vaccine. The only proven method to stop the spread is to make sure that we keep our distance and to wash our hands as much as possible and moving in that direction. So we appreciate everybody's support in doing that. If you are out in a store and someone asks you to put on a mask, please do so. I know there's some strong opinions about that, but I haven't met the person that comes up to an individual that might have the flu. I have not met the person that comes up real close to them, before usually you spread out. And that's what we're asking people to do, spread out. Don't come close to others. And if you do that, we'll all get through this together. Businesses will remain open as they are, and hopefully continue on in that fashion. And the metrics that we're gauged by, the goal is 50 cases per 100,000 population. And currently we're at 70 or 80. So we need to do a little bit better job to make sure that we keep our social distancing, again, wear our face coverings and wash our hands as much as possible. So with that, really, I'm excited about today's activities, because if you watched City Council, this has been a hot topic of sorts. It's an important project with regards to the city of Springfield. Actually, as Ed Curtis from Memorial Health Services said, it's been the most important project that the city has faced in decades, and that is the consolidation of rails. And our experts with Hanson, especially Jim Moll, probably can speak to the historic aspect, but the rail project in itself, the consolidation of rail, has probably been on the books for probably over 100 years. But, and our very own Abraham Lincoln, he was the one that actually did a lot of the rail project with Norfolk Southern, I do believe, if my history is correct. I'm sure Jim Moll or someone will correct me if that's not correct. But with us today is Jim Moll and Jimmie Austin. They're the dynamic duo in the room together. And the other individual is Steve Warren. He does a lot of the property acquisitions, things of that nature. And then we have Nate Bottom, who's the Public Works Director and oversees the project from the city's perspective. But I'll do the introduction, and if you would just share what you'd like about your own particular individual self, and then talk about the challenges during the pandemic, if you like, and then we'll jump into the rail discussion. But first is Jim Moll. Jim has been the overseer, and I call him the head engineer with regards to the rail project. You have to have someone that takes the lead. I remember my first day in office, or one of the first weeks, we had a pretty tense discussion with the FRA and some others about the actual consolidation of the rail. And it wasn't going the direction that we had anticipated, what the city wanted, as well as the public. And actually, it's those tough discussions that got us to that point. And Jim's really been a superstar with regards to enhancing and identifying financial resources, because this is just not a City of Springfield project. We're the beneficiaries of it, but it is a federal, state, and local initiative that's bringing together governments from, the federal government. You have great individuals, Senator Durbin, Senator Duckworth, as well as Congressman Davis and LaHood. And then on the state side, Governor Pritzker, Senator Menard, Senator McClure, and others. On the House side, it's been Butler, Murphy, and Scheer on the representative side. And then on local level, Chairman Andy Van Meter, the county board, the city council, and myself working together to really make this happen. And the one initiative that's been pretty exciting is with regards to the governor's initiative, where they passed the capital bill. And one of the first initiatives was the Springfield Rail Project, and doing the signing that signified that importance of the capital project, moving this project forward, because it will be a dynamic change for all of us and a better way for our lives as we move forward together. But with that, Jim, if you would share with us a little insight about yourself and anything you'd like to share on the virus aspect before we dive into the rail topic.
Well,
Jim?
sure, Mayor. Thanks a lot, and thanks for having us. I'm Jim Moll with Hanson Professional Services. I came to Springfield and started working for Hanson about 1980, and one of my first assignments was Hanson was working on the rail project when we moved the tracks that used to run along Wabash Avenue and shifted those down to Interstate 72. A lot of older Springfield residents will remember getting rid of those tracks along Wabash. And I worked on that project, and we completed that back in the early 90s. The rail project hasn't had a whole lot of impacts from the COVID. I know I haven't had a haircut since this started, but we've made a lot of progress on the rail project. And with me here today is Jimmie Austin, and Jimmie's kind of taken the lead on the public engagement for this. And Jimmie, if you want to tell a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk to Steve.
Hello, Mayor. My name is Jimmie Austin. I've been with Hanson for 37 years now, and I'm the lead technician on this project. One of my jobs is to kind of hear from the public and get an understanding of what they're feeling and their concerns about the project and anything they might have a complaint or concern about. So I'm that ear that comes to them, and I talk to them, and I get the information and I share it with the city.
Yeah, Jimmie's always our first point of contact for the public. When everybody has a question or wants to know what's going on, they should never hesitate to call Jimmie at 788-2450 to find out what's going on with the project. And also, we've got Steve Warren on. And Steve, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Steve Warren at Hanson Professional Services, and I'm the land acquisition manager for this project. As far as the COVID thing, we have had to make some changes. We don't like to go into property owners' homes and things like that because we don't want to spread it to them, and we don't want them to spread it to us. Other than that, I'm just in charge to make sure that the federal regulations are all followed as far as relocation and acquisition, so that we can maintain funding for this project.
Well, thank you. Thank all three of you for being here. We really appreciate it. And then Nate Bottom, he's the one that is the overseer from the city side and works well with Hanson professionals and moving the project forward and keeping it on time. So Nate, if you do a little introduction, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm Nate Bottom, the Director of Public Works. I formerly was the city engineer, so I've been working on the project since 2012, since we received the record of decision, environmental impact statement study. And it's an exciting project to work on, consolidating the rail that will improve the medical district, as you mentioned, Mayor, will substantially reduce accidents and minimize the traffic delays and ultimately eliminate train horn noise in the corridor.
No doubt about it. And I know my parents, we lived on Whittier and Laurel and hear the train whistles going in the middle of the night without a doubt. So I know that'll be a welcome oral sight, hearing auditorially improvement for the citizens, and one that's been long sought after. And, before we get started, we will show a video, but Jim Moll, if you would, I'm going to test your history. How long has it been when they've talked about, do you know the answer with regards to rail consolidation? I know it's been decades, but I thought it was a long time ago, like the West Plan or something of that nature.
When the park districts put together a plan, I don't know if you remember this, back in 1922, the city of Springfield contracted with a national group that was doing park work to do a long-range plan for the city of Springfield. And the long-range plan for the city of Springfield back in 1922 called for consolidation of our rail corridors into a single corridor through the city. Now, at that time, the proposal was to put the corridor out along where the 19th Street tracks are now. But again, that's been a goal of the city of Springfield for 100 years now, because we really have a rail problem in our city. We have 3 north-south main line Class 1 railroad corridors running through our city at 3rd Street, 10th Street, and 19th Street. We have 63 at-grade rail crossings in the city of Springfield. On a per capita basis, that's more than any other city in the state of Illinois. So we, at one time, were blessed with a lot of good rail access. Things don't come to Springfield by rail now. So now the rail has become a kind of a curse for the city. It splits up the city, it splits up neighborhoods, it splits downtown, it splits the medical district. It's a continual source of problems. And just to highlight the problems, just the other day, we had another fatality at 10th and Jefferson, a car hit by a train. I believe that's 5 fatalities in the city of Springfield in just the last 5 years from trains hitting people or hitting cars. So it's not just a noise and a pollution and a congestion problem, it is a serious safety problem for the city of Springfield. And back in, like I said earlier, the city did some rail consolidation work back in the 1990s, but what really provided the impetus for the newest project was IDOT's plans in about 2009, 2010 to increase rail traffic on the 3rd Street corridor. First off, for additional high-speed trains, and secondly, because the Union Pacific was building a new intermodal yard up in Joliet, which would increase rail traffic through our city. And I think we've all seen those trailer stack trains that run down the 3rd Street corridor. Those have been generated by the new intermodal facility that the Union Pacific built up at Joliet. So we knew a whole lot of additional train traffic was coming to our community, and the city and the county got together and said, well, if we're going to do this, IDOT, we need a plan for something for Springfield. We just can't let that destroy our city. And so that led to a study that looked at a lot of different alternatives and came up with what we've got now. The plan that we've put together and was approved by the federal government back in 2012. And that's to move the 3rd Street corridor tracks onto a new expanded corridor on 10th Street and build a series of underpasses and overpasses on the 10th Street corridor, and also to build new underpasses on 19th Street at South Grand and Ash Streets. All of the busy streets on 19th Street will be grade separated with underpasses. All of the busy streets on the 10th Street corridor will be grade separated, underpasses and overpasses, and also a new overpass up at 19th and North Grand up by the ballpark up there. Really one of the most dangerous crossings in the whole city. The goal then would be to take those 63 at-grade crossings and get that down to about 30. Significantly improving safety in the city. In fact, our projections indicate that your chances of being hit by a train in the city of Springfield after completion of this project will be reduced by 80%. And the amount of time that people will wait for trains in the city will be reduced by 70%. Just an example, before we started our project, if you were to drive across Ash Street from MacArthur Boulevard over to Southeast High School, you'd have to cross 3 sets of railroad tracks. You cross tracks at 3rd, you cross tracks at 10th, and cross tracks at 19th Street. three places where you could potentially get stopped by a train. We've already eliminated one of those by building the underpass at 10th and Ash, and before the project's done, those will all be gone. You'll be able to drive all the way across town on Ash Street and never have to worry about getting stopped by a train. A huge improvement for our community. In addition to that, we create a quiet zone at all of the remaining rail corridors and eliminate all of the regular train horn noises that we see in our city now. And everybody who lives in Springfield hears trains. In fact, we determined that the noise impacts, currently in the way that at the beginning of our project, there were about 7,000 residences that were rated as part of our study as having noise impacts. The project, once completed, will reduce that down to about 14, a dramatic reduction in noise from trains in our city. So obviously a good project from a lot of standpoints, from a safety standpoint, from a community livability standpoint, and from a future economic development standpoint, getting the trains out of downtown, getting the trains out of the medical district, a huge economic development advantage for our community. And we think that these are some of the most important reasons of why this project has been so attractive in finding funding. We've gotten federal grant money, both in Tiger grants and build grants from the federal government. And those are competitive grants where hundreds of other communities across the country are competing for this money. The city of Springfield has gotten 3 of these grants. Nobody that I know of has gotten more than 1. And that's a tribute, first off, to the quality of our project, the benefits it will bring, the community support it has had, and also the legislative support that we've had in Washington and here in Springfield. In addition to the federal money, as the mayor mentioned, just when the Capitol bill was passed last year, there was $122 million assigned in the new Capitol bill for the Springfield Rail Improvement Project. A huge step in our funding for what was estimated at the beginning as a $315 million project. Also, we've gotten 3 significant grants from the Illinois Commerce Commission as part of their grade crossing protection passes, and they've told us that we're in line to get a couple more. So we've been very successful at finding money for the project, and that's allowed us to begin the construction. And we've got a little video that we're going to show you here real quick. And Jimmy, can you cue up the video? We've got a flyover video where we sent our drone out and flew the corridor. And this is just a couple weeks ago. And this kind of gives you the overview of the project and gives you a little description of it. So let's run the video and listen to this, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the project and some of the progress we've made.
This drone flight was conducted on September 1st, 2020. The flight begins at the southern terminus of the project at Stanford Avenue and proceeds north to the northern terminus of the project near Sangamon Avenue.
That's one of those Norfolk freight trains going through there, Union Pacific.
Norfolk Southern divergence. The Union Pacific tracks, along with Amtrak, continue north along 3rd Street, and the Norfolk Southern tracks curve to the east, then continue north along the 10th Street corridor. Usable segment 4 is currently under construction. Construction on this segment began in the fall of 2019, and the completion date is anticipated in the summer of 2022. New right-of-way was acquired on the south and east sides of the existing Norfolk Southern tracks. This segment includes 2 new bridges for both the Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern trains over 5th and 6th Street. Current progress includes reconstructing the intersection at the Isles Avenue and Burton Drive area, building up nearly 6 feet of embankment and subballast for the track bed at the 5th and 6th Street bridges, construction of bridge abutments and retaining walls. Steel plate girders that are 13 feet 2 inches tall will be erected in the fall of 2020. Over 6,400,000 pounds of structural steel will be installed for the 4 new bridges at 5th and 6th Street. Also, a jack and bore operation for a 48-inch diameter sanitary sewer inside a 66-inch diameter steel casing is now complete. Usable segment 2 extends from 6th Street to South Grand Avenue and includes 2 new underpasses at Ash Street and Laurel Street. The Ash Street underpass construction began in the fall of 2017 and was completed in November of 2019. The Union Pacific Bridge is on the west side or left side of the screen, and the Norfolk Southern Bridge is on the east side or the right-hand side of the screen. The Laurel Street underpass began construction in the fall of 2019 and is expected to be completed in the summer of 2021. This underpass is currently under construction and the Norfolk Southern Bridge is completed. Once the tracks are shifted to this bridge, the Union Pacific Bridge construction will begin. Usable Segment 5 extends from South Grand Avenue to Capitol Avenue and includes bridge replacements similar to the 5th and 6th Street bridges at South Grand Avenue and Cook Street. This segment is intended to be on a March 2021 letting with completion anticipated in early 2023. This segment also includes the purchase of the Norfolk Southern Rail Yard. New right-of-way through this segment continues to be acquired along the east side of the existing tracks. Usable Segment 3 extends from Capitol Avenue to Madison Street and includes 2 new underpasses at Madison and Jefferson Streets and construction of the new Springfield Sangamon County Transportation Center. This segment is intended to begin construction in early 2022 with a completion date targeted in the summer of 2024, with both underpasses being constructed during the same time. The Transportation Center is anticipated to be completed in late 2025. Usable Segment 1 extends from Madison Street to Carpenter Street and included a new underpass at Carpenter Street. The 1908 race riot archaeological site was discovered in this segment. The Carpenter Street underpass construction began in the summer of 2014 and was completed on time and under budget in the summer of 2016. A pump station was installed which prevents the underpass from flooding during large rainfall events. This new pump station design was actually tested during the summer of 2016 during a large rain event with over 5.5 inches of rainfall in portions of Springfield. The Carpenter Street underpass was the only underpass in Springfield that was not flooded during this rainfall event. Usable Segment 6 extends from Carpenter Street to Ridgely Avenue and includes a new underpass at North Grand Avenue. This segment includes a new railroad corridor from Phillips Street to Ridgely Avenue and will bisect the EPA building on North Grand Avenue. The rail corridor continues north immediately east of the bingo hall. This segment is scheduled to begin construction in late 2023 with a completion date anticipated in late 2025. The northern terminus of this segment is at the existing Union Pacific tracks north of Ridgely Avenue near Sangamon Avenue. Project completion for relocating the Union Pacific tracks to the 10th Street corridor is planned for late 2025.
Pull up slides. So that kind of gives the overview of the project, shows how the pieces all fit together. One of the important things about this project is that we were able to break it up into what we call usable segments. And there was, as was discussed in the video, there are 6 usable segments. Can you pull up the slideshow, Jimmy?
Okay.
Yeah, let's share our screen here again. One of the things about the usable segments is that it made the project simpler to fund. Since we had a $315 million project, it's tough to find that kind of money right off the bat. We were able to fund and build the project in these usable segments. And the first one was the Carpenter Street underpass. And what's great about that is that we were able to get an underpass built at Carpenter Street. And if for whatever reason the project never went any further after that, the community had a way that they knew that they could always get to the hospitals from east of the tracks, that you knew that you could always go up to Carpenter Street and get across to the hospitals and not be blocked by a train. I'm going to skip to the next slide. So that first section we built, what we called usable segment 1, is the Carpenter Street underpass. And then, yeah, this shows Carpenter Street. Everybody's familiar with that. So that got built as far as our first usable segment. And the next piece we built is usable segment 2, which is under construction now. And that included the new underpass at Ash Street. Jim, you want to flip to that? That's now open, so you can get across town on the south side now and not have to worry about trains. And Laurel Street is also under construction right now. We had hoped that Laurel Street would be finished by now, but we have had a number of delays with the rail company getting out there and finishing up their track work. So we've got one of the bridges done. We need to get the trains shifted over onto the new bridge so that we can build the second bridge there at Laurel Street. And our goal is to have Laurel Street opened by early next summer. So then that will complete the usable segment 2 project. The next piece we're working on that's under construction now, yeah, this is another picture of Laurel Street, is what we call usable segment 4. And these are the new bridges at 5th and 6th Street. There's bridges there now, but there are one single track bridge, and we need 2 double track bridges at those locations. So this shows 6th and Princeton. Princeton will be closed. That nasty intersection with Princeton will be eliminated. And there will be new bridges at this location for the railroads to get across the tracks. And Jimmy, I think if you flip to the next one. And these show the steel girders that are going to be going in place there at 5th and 6th Street. It's tough to get the scale on this, but those little orange things down at the bottom, that's a 5-gallon bucket. So you can see the size of the girders that we're going to be setting in place at 5th and 6th Street in order to support the railroad tracks as they cross there. Our next piece, which is usable segment 5, flip back to the picture again. Our next piece, which is usable segment 5, is the stretch to the north of Ash Street, north of South Grand, up to Cook Street. So it'll include new bridges at Cook Street and at South Grand Avenue, and go all the way up to Capitol. So from South Grand up to Capitol is what we call our usable segment 4 project. And we're in design on that. And we have usable segment 5. We have land acquisition almost complete on that. And as soon as those last parcels are acquired, we'll have completed all the land acquisition plans south of Cook Street. So we're well on our way on the project. Now, when we erect these girders down there at 5th and 6th Street, we're going to have to close 5th and 6th Street for about a week to 10 days. So sometime in October and November, people need to be ready that we're going to have detours on 5th and 6th Street that's going to cause a lot of traffic disruptions. We will have signs out in advance so that people know that and can think about what their detour route is going to be. But just so everybody aware that we're going to have about a week or two when we're going to close 5th and 6th Street. The next piece we're going to build will be up at Jefferson and Madison Streets when we build the new underpasses at Madison and Jefferson. Those are 2 of our busiest streets into the city. Given the number of trains going through there and the number of cars that go through there every day, those are dangerous crossings. So we're going to build new underpass at Madison Street and Jefferson Street when we build the stretch of track through that part of downtown. And that's also the time when we'll be building the new transportation center, which will include our new Amtrak station right there just north of the county building. The thing to keep in mind at that location is when we build the new underpasses at Madison and Jefferson, just like we've had to close Ash Street and Laurel, we're going to have to close Madison and Jefferson for about a year. So traffic in the downtown area is going to be a mess while we do that. But once it's done, then we'll be able to eliminate those at-grade crossings there at Madison and Jefferson. And then we'll complete the project with usable segment 6, which is the north end, which includes an underpass at North Grand Avenue. And then we'll be able to get the trains all moved over off of 3rd Street on the 10th. And then we could focus on the new underpasses on 19th Street. Our goal
one of the things you Oh, go ahead. Wrap it up. Yep.
Yeah,
Go
our
ahead.
goal is to get the trains moved over onto the 10th Street corridor by the end of 2025, have the new Amtrak station transportation center built, and have a quiet zone in place for that part of the city into 2025.
Yeah, thanks for that great overview. And I think that was important. When we came into office in 2015, I mentioned the tough discussion we had with FRA and others. At that point in time, there was no timeline, but what really expedited things is the commitment from the federal government, the FRA, again, Senator Durbin really pushing the initiative as well as others, and really moving in that direction. And the project did get the timeline of 2025 and a lot of support on all levels. But you did mention a slight delay, I guess, on 5th and 6th Street. And is that any way related to COVID, or is it just because of the difficulties and challenges of the project?
Well, Mayor, there have been a number of difficulties and challenges of the project unrelated to COVID, but there has been a COVID effect in that the railroads, because of COVID, have lost a lot of business. Their traffic has really dropped off the first 6 months of this year. And because of that, they had to let a lot of their staff go. And we still need their people to build their tracks at these locations. So their people have been stretched thin because they've had to do layoffs. So it's been difficult getting not only the railroad people here to do the work, but the railroad materials, all of the track and ties and everything that goes into building a railroad track. All of that has been slowed down because of layoffs and slowdowns in the railroads themselves. So the COVID has affected us in that regard in terms of getting the railroads here to work.
Yeah, makes sense. And then with acquisitions, that's an important piece of this, is land acquisition. Steve Warren, he's that's been his main focus of expertise as well. And Steve, if you could kind of touch on the process associated with land acquisition, what do you look at, and things of that nature, and the parameters, and then we'll follow up. I'll ask the question of Jimmie Austin, who handles a lot of the difficulties associated with that.
Okay. The general process for land acquisition is first we identify the parcels that are needed for the project, and that's done through the right-of-way drawings and plats and things like that. And then we will generally assign an appraiser to take a look at the properties, and once they're done with the appraisal, we have to have a review appraisal. At the same time, if there are people living there or the owners, renters, and things like that, we'll send the relocation agent to do an initial look at the properties and at the owners, and to see what kind of needs they would need to be relocated. After that, the appraisal is done, review is completed, and it's signed. We send it to the city, to the mayor to sign on the amount that's being offered the property owner, which they're always offered minimum of the appraised value. In other words, we don't get an appraisal and say, okay, we're going to purchase this try to buy it for you for underneath the appraised value. So the negotiating begins at the appraised value, and hopefully it ends there too. But and then once the offer is made to the property owners, then they become eligible for relocation benefits at that time. So they can begin to move or plan their move, and they can work with our relocation agent that is assigned to that property, and to find another place to live, or to move the renters or the tenants and things like that. And once the property owner agrees to a value on the acquisition, then it goes to the city council for approval, and we purchase the property, and it becomes the city's property.
Yeah, appreciate that. And with regards to notifying the property owners, do you send, I guess, a certified mail? Is that how that works? And then, how's that part of the process work?
Yes.
As far as the notification.
Okay. When we notify the property owners, they have to be, by regulation, they have to be notified by either certified mail or hand delivered. In other words, we can meet with them and hand them the documents to sign for acquiring their property, or certified mail. those are our only two options.
And then is that like we're working on different segments of the project? So is that how far out do you start sending those notifications?
Well, with the notifications for acquisition, those are usually those are sent once we get the offer signed and things like that from the mayor's office. Okay, those are sent, the day, or I guess a week or so before well, actually at the time we make the offer, they're sent at that time through either mail. As far as previous notice, I think
right.
Maybe Jim can talk to that. I'm not sure how we've notified them as far as in advance. I don't know how far in advance the property owners have been notified, but that doesn't have to be done through certified mail. That's just
that's one of the questions, Jim. I didn't know if we're working on different aspects of the rail. How far out are people notified that the property may be needed for the project?
Well, Mayor, we began notifying people about the project when we first started our public engagement program and started to look at alternatives. And by the time we completed our environmental impact statement back in 2012, we had identified all of the parcels that were necessary to purchase for the project. And we showed those at a public hearing and then a series of public meetings that we've held since then. So I could turn it over to Jimmie Austin a little bit now, and he can talk about our public engagement program, because as I said, we identified all the parcels that were necessary to the project back in 2012 and have shown those repeatedly at all of our meetings since then. And I think we've sent out notification to all the property owners who owned the property at that time that they were involved.
Yes. Mayor, one of the things we wanted to do when we first received this project to be transparent. And what does that mean? We wanted to let the public know what was going on every time we were doing things. So what we did, we had a public meeting every 6 months. And when anyone can come out, we sent out newsletters letting everyone know that when the public meeting was, what time, where it was being located. And we also set up a website that's letting you know what's going on. Any type of information you need was on the website that we created. So we allowed the public to know exactly what was going on. And once they come to the public meeting, we even allowed them to have a whole hour or so to discuss anything they want to discuss. We set up a microphone and a stand for them. So if they wanted to, say wherever they would like to as far as their comments towards the project. So we wanted to make sure this project was transparent so everyone would have an idea of what's going on and how they would be affected. We even created a big table-sized mosaic that would show the tracks going through or around the city of Springfield, so the residents can come in and see where their property is located and, ask any kind of questions, or would their property be affected or would their property not be affected. We actually had a lot of people that were excited about this program, this project. They wanted to make sure, this project is going through, and they didn't mind. A lot of them wanted the tracks to actually go through their homes. They were prepared to do something different because they know this was good for Springfield.
Now, Jimmie, our video is available on our website, right?
Yes, the video is available on the website.
And the website address is?
www.Springfield Rail.
So it's www.springfieldrailroad.com. If anybody wants to view the video that we just showed and look at it in more detail. In terms of scheduling the land acquisition, Mayor, when we began the project, we were purchasing land as we needed it for each individual usable segment. Now, since we got additional funding from the state through the capital bill, we are proceeding with land acquisition for the entire corridor along the 10th Street. And I believe, Steve, that we've made contact with all of the property owners through the rest of the corridor.
Yes, actually, we do have 11 more property owners that we have not made offers at this time, but appraisals have been ordered. So pretty much everybody along the 10th Street corridor has been notified.
And of course, with any construction project, there's challenges, and Nate can speak to that from the infrastructure, just road side of things, but also on the rail, we received notification So Nate, I guess if you want to speak to, some of the disruptions you've heard about, things of that nature, and just so everybody understands the process that we follow is Jimmie Austin, he's been a champion with regards to meeting with property owners and really trying to find out what the, items they may have that need to be addressed. But Nate, if you would touch on some of the items related to the construction, because it is a pretty complex item, with regards to sewers, relocates, things of that nature.
Correct. Yeah, we've definitely have complaints about the sewers. We have addressed various issues in regards to them. We have done televising in order to identify where the locations are. We've done spot repairs. We've also treated routes with clogged sewers within that area in order to resolve some of those issues. We've also televised some of the lines to some of the property owners and are in the process of addressing those and have relocated some of the sewers. And then in regards to the actual road, the construction, we've had the contractors move their equipment as much as possible. The contractor dug temporary drainage ditches in order to address some of the storm sewer concerns. And then obviously mowing was a concern. So resident engineer for Hanson, as well as Daryl Harris with our office, get together in regards to that so that we'll stay on top of that. And then we'll also build mowing into our future contracts as a pay item so that it's clear that it's the contractor's responsibility. We've also adjusted barricade locations so that we can have additional that's along there. Obviously it is very disruptive to them, and we understand that. And if you are having any concerns, please reach out to Jimmie Austin at first at 788-2450. If he can't resolve the issue, then you can go ahead and reach out to me at 789-2255. And then go ahead, Mayor.
Yep. Yeah, it's good that he threw out your number first, Jimmie. Did you notice that? But with regards to what he touched on, I think a lot of people don't realize this. I didn't realize it. You think, oh, the rail improvement, it's just the surface. We're improving the surface. But actually, it's improving the infrastructure underground, the sewers. With the underpasses, we've had flooding in the past, tragic death of someone that happened. And so really, it's improving the infrastructure below grade, below underground. And so that's an important factor that's really weighed into the significance of the project. But Jimmie, I know when you get called, especially now, really after the property's been assessed, we purchased the properties that are deemed necessary for the rail project, but there are, through construction, other things might happen. And then we go back and reassess what the property owner might be experiencing. So if you could touch on that for us.
Well, one of the things we do once the construction starts and the property owner's been bought out, the neighbor of where the construction is located has some concerns. Some of the concerns are the contractors are too close, or the contractors are vibrating their property. I've got calls that said that they have cracks in their walls in their basement now. So what I do, I go out with a structural engineer and we do a site plan. We evaluate what's going on with them. We write down what their concerns are. We take pictures of everything that's going on. And once we come back to the office, we get all that into a site work. And then what we do is send it to the city to see what they want to do with it next. But one of the main things for when we talk to the property owners is you have to understand what they're going through and what they're feeling also. Some of the things, as their whole life has been destructed by this thing. So, we have to understand and try to work with them the best way we can.
Yeah, and what's important to note, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure who the right person would be to address this. A vibration study had been done with regards to the train movement. And of course, with construction, that's a little bit different. That wasn't as significant as being studied. But once the project's completed and the trains start rolling, aren't we going back through and doing another vibration study and the impact that it has had on the properties that are still existing?
Yeah, Mayor, when we did our study back in 2012, we obviously couldn't measure the future impacts in terms of noise and vibration. So we hired one of the leading noise and vibration modeling companies in the country and had them create a model based on where the properties are and where the trains are going to be and the number of trains, and did projections of what they believe that the noise levels and vibration levels would be in adjacent properties. And now, once we complete the project and there's actual train traffic on the actual train locations, we're going to go back out there and measure and determine whether their projections were accurate in terms of noise levels and vibration levels along the corridor.
Okay, that's good. And then I imagine, as Jimmie had touched on with the properties, with regards to reevaluating properties, does that happen? Or as far as this is more of a question for Steve, it specifically says if the reallocation process is still occurring, and then how will that be reported as far as the impact to the properties?
Not sure I'm following what your question is as far as.
And yeah, the reallocation process, if it's still occurring, you know, as far as I think of the impact of properties. So after Jimmie Austin had said, if we deem there needs to be an assessment, how's that revisited?
Oh, well, I think that we would do an appraisal of the property and try to appraise it at the time, the value at the time prior to construction. In other words, would the value of the property of what it was prior to any of this construction beginning. And then we can go, you know, we can go from there as far as whether or not we're purchasing the property or what we're actually doing with it.
Okay. And then, of course, with the rail project, there's also road infrastructure that has to happen. And I know specifically there's some happening right now around Burton Avenue, I think in Isles. And that will probably take a few weeks. Do you know, is there an update when those roads would be completed?
Yeah, Mayor, we would like to get Burton Avenue and Isles realigned as quickly as we can. In fact, we had hoped to have that done by now, but there's, as you're aware, we've had some issues with utility companies, and Nate has been a champion trying to help move these utility companies along. You know, these are independent companies separate from the city, but we've done our best to try and get them to complete their work so that our contractor can get in there and get the street work done. As soon as the utilities are finished, it's only going to be 3 or 4 weeks before we can finalize the Isles and Burton and get that all buttoned up the way it's going to look in the end.
And this touches on road projects in general. I don't think a lot of people realize the infrastructure that has to be moved with regards to the utilities. So Nate, if you could touch on that, you know, the time it takes and the coordination with regards to our utilities and the relocates and how that, you know, kind of integrates into the project.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the most difficult part of the project a lot of times, getting the utilities relocated. You know, that obviously Burton's been closed since I think June. And there are various utilities been on that pole. I think Comcast is planning on actually doing their work on September 22nd, and then CWLP will be able to drop their lines and remove the pole in regards to that specific project. But in regards to road construction projects throughout the city, it's always delayed the project. We're having delays even on Hilltop Road, getting some of the power poles removed. We're trying to expedite that. However, we've now implemented a utility coordination meeting that we're going to host quarterly with the various utilities in order to try to expedite the process and keep everybody on the same page is our ultimate goal. And then also getting into city works, everybody having their capital improvement plans in there, and then being able to generate work orders off of that or tasks, I think will also help move that in the future.
Yeah, and CityWorks, for those that might not know, that's the integrative project management system, software system that the city uses. So various departments can work on the same project and have real-time approval of the processes as we move along. It makes it more efficient. And so that's something we've been working on for a number of years, but it's been expedited, of course, with the coronavirus. Everybody's moving towards technology a lot faster than what was occurring previously. So that helps with the project. The one thing I noticed on the video, Jim Moll, probably this would be a question for you. You know, on Carpenter, you see this nice underpass newly built. How will 5th Street and 6th Street and South Grand, those ones that we are refurbishing, will they have the walkways or, you know, the newer ones, of course, they're wide enough for bike pathways. Can you describe what the reconstruction of the existing underpasses would look like?
Well, at 5th and 6th Street, the underpasses are going to pretty much remain as they are underneath with a little bit of cleanup work. On South Grand Avenue, I know we're going to make a lot of improvements on the South Grand Avenue underpass. We're going to get rid of those really ugly concrete slope walls on the south side and do a little bit of sidewalk widening through there. Cook Street will also stay the same pretty much as it is, but with new bridges. Cook Street's a little bit newer. But all of the new underpasses will be like Carpenter Street and like Ash Street, where you have the raised sidewalk. So that's what it's going to be like on Laurel and Madison and Jefferson and up at North Grand. So all those new underpasses will have that raised sidewalk. All of the new underpasses will also have the new drainage system that was been so successful at Carpenter. In fact, we are improving the underpasses at South Grand and Cook Street with new drainage storage areas for those so that they will be much less likely to flood than what they are now. So significant drainage improvements at Cook Street and South Grand, and all of the new underpasses will have the raised sidewalks that get people up away and safer from the streets.
Yeah, it makes it much easier for pedestrian passageway, things of that nature. And as the construction's going on, I know in some parts you have to have fence barriers, for EPA. How's that being handled with this type of a project? Is that a requirement, or how's that work?
Well, along the rail corridor, our goal is at the completion of the project that the entire rail corridor will be fenced. If you stop and think about how Springfield is now, there's a lot of places where you can just walk right out onto railroad tracks. And that trespassing is not only illegal, it's extremely dangerous. People walking on railroad tracks causes a lot of problems, especially people walk on railroad tracks when they're with their headphones on and they don't even hear the train, let alone see the train. So our goal in the end is we're going to fence the entire corridor, and we'll probably have a nice looking fence similar to what was installed on 3rd Street here a couple of years ago. In the meantime, we're going to have some temporary fence during construction, but the goal is at the end, both sides of the rail corridor will be fenced to keep people off of it and keep it safer.
Oh, great. And then I'm not sure, this question, I'm not sure, I guess it's the current construction project. It says, when are they starting on the north side? So I don't know where that would be at.
Well, the north side is what we call usable segment 6. It's the stretch
Okay. Oh, north end of Springfield.
Yeah.
I was thinking north side of the project.
No, that's the stretch that's north of Carpenter Street, and our goal is to start construction on that in 2024 and wrap it up in 2025. And that'll include not just construction to the north, but it will be all of the new Union Pacific tracks all the way through town as part of that same contract.
Very good. And I know going back to the property purchase, I think this has come up where we've had a couple of presenters at the city council with regards to the current project happening. And I know Nate Bottom and I went out to a particular homeowner specifically toward their property, and the ultimate decision will be up to the city council, but we are moving towards acquisition of that particular property. And so it's almost like a reassessment. And I'm just going to explain the process, and then anybody can jump in to correct me if I misspeak. But how that would work is we have to go in and assess the property. And again, this is a property that didn't qualify under the rail project. It wasn't a property that was needed. So this is more of the city working with Hanson engineers, assessing the situation, what happened, might be a hardship associated with it, and then made the determination that we are going to go ahead and acquire the property. In that case, we would go in and assess the property to see if there's any items that need to be repaired. I think Jimmie Austin had referred to cracking, things of that nature. So we'd actually do an assessment of what it would cost to improve or repair that particular damage. The reason for that is the city would be able to get reimbursed for that portion of the repairs. And then the city would actually take it upon itself to acquire the property for the appraised value. So the appraisal will happen after that. And then that's how that part of the process would work. And then, cover the closing costs and associated moving costs with that. So it'd be that kind of scenario, because it will be an out-of-pocket expense of the city. And when we started this project, again, it's pre my administration, but part of it was the city's portion is the land acquisition part of it. So that's, since it wasn't necessarily needed for the rail, if we deem that we need to go that direction, we'll recoup our costs with the, parts that we would repair. That's what we're reimbursed. And then we'd have to do the out-of-pocket, the city would, with regards to the appraisal and making that happen. So I don't know if there's anything else as far as that needs to be clarified on that. Sounds good. That's good. And Jim, if you would speak to the funding real quick, the city's portion of the funding, or what was agreed upon. If you want to give the broad overview of you mentioned it was a $315 million project. We have $122 million coming from the state through the capital bill. And then the other portions, if you'd like to speak to that real quick.
Yeah, Mayor, when we first put together a funding plan for this project, we looked at state, federal, and local sources. And we tried to imagine what might be available over the 10 years that it was likely to take to build the project. And at that time, we assumed that the city share would be about $34 million that the city would need to come up with. And with the mayor at that time, we talked about how the city might fund that, whether it would be borrowing or whatever. As we've gotten into the project, the city has been even more successful than we would have ever hoped in finding state and federal funds for the project. As I said, we've got significant dollars from the Illinois Commerce Commission and from the federal government through Tiger and Build grants. And again, the state committed another $122 million for the project. So we've gotten to the point now, primarily because of the assistance of our state and federal legislators, that the city's share is only about $6 million. And most of that has already been spent by the city since the city took responsibility for acquiring the land for the usable segment 4 down by 5th and 6th Street. So as we stand today, we have identified and have in place funding for just about 3/4 of the project. We only have that final 25% that we need to fund. We think we can probably obtain that through federal and ICC sources. So at this point, we think we're in really good shape to get this project completed through our funding package by 2025, with the city share only being about $6 to $7 million.
And so the one other item that I think was briefly mentioned, but if you could touch on the 5th and 6th Street property, or the project rather, the closures, is that coming up in October, or when's that anticipated?
Well,
and this is an entire shutdown of 5th and 6th.
It depends a little bit again on the railroad's schedules, but our plan right now is that we will close 5th Street and 6th Street for about a week to 10 days to set the girders in place and to complete the street work. And that will probably occur in the middle to late part of October. So people will need to be ready to find detour routes, and we will post signs, those big flashing message boards to let people know what is going to occur, and also try and get stories in the newspaper to let people know what the exact dates as we get closer. But again, 5th and 6th Streets are each going to close for about 7 to 10 days while we set those girders in place and finish up the road work. There's also a major sewer reconnection that needs to occur in 6th Street that's going to take some time. But again, we've got the contractor committed to doing that work in less than 10 days. And he's probably going to do some evening and weekend work in order to accomplish that.
And then one final question, and then we'll ask each one to wrap it up. When will the construction start on North Grand? The area by Langfelder Ballpark. Is that what's the timeline for that?
Well, the whole 19th Street corridor, which includes that overpass up there by the ballpark, that will occur after our 2025 completion date to get the trains moved off of 3rd Street to 10th Street. And that will be the city's next challenge, will be to find funding for that overpass and for the new underpasses at South Grand and Ash. But I always want to emphasize that work on 19th Street is and has always been an integral part of the entire project, that everybody knows that that's going to get done too. and that we're not going to stop as soon as we get 3rd Street trains moved over on 10th Street. But the entire project is what's necessary to resolve the rail issues for the city of Springfield. Anybody that's ever gotten caught by a train in 19th and South Grand knows that those are the longest, slowest trains that move through the city of Springfield. And the 19th Street corridor is our most residential corridor of anywhere in the city. So resolving the issues on 19th Street is just as important as resolving the issues on 3rd Street and 10th Street. And we're looking to start that work right after we get this relocated in 2025.
And just to the south of that, of course, is the Pillsbury plant. And I think there's an opportunity to actually probably combine the two and make a dramatic impact. But unfortunately, we're out of time. We do have a few other questions, mainly dealing with, properties, things of that nature. So again, if you would give your number, Jimmie Austin, or if you want to give Nate, you can do that, which is 789-2255. But if you would, Jim Moll, and if each one of you would just take a few moments to wrap it up, we'd appreciate it. And thanks for being here. So, Jim?
Well, Mayor, we appreciate the opportunity to get out and talk to people. You know, one of the things that's caused by the COVID is we have not been able to have our regularly scheduled public meetings. We haven't had one this year, and we're due to have another one here in a couple of months. So that's been a problem for us. But thanks for hosting this. We love the opportunity to get out and talk to people about our project. If anybody wants us to come and make a presentation to your civic group or neighborhood group, Jimmie's available to do that at any time. We've got a great project, it's a real difference maker for the city of Springfield. We need to make sure that we make it a win-win for everybody. Jimmie?
Well, Mayor, I just want to say I thank you for allowing us to have this opportunity. And like I say, anytime that there's a concern about your project, don't hesitate to call me, 788-2450. I'll be glad to talk to you about any concerns you might have.
Well, thank you, Jimmie. We really appreciate being here. Steve?
Yeah, I just want to let you know that.
Would you like to say? Yep.
Yeah, I appreciate you having us on here today, and that we have almost all the offers out on all the segments except for usable segment 6, which is the north end. We have 11 more offers to get out on that, and we have also done some early acquisitions on the 19th Street corridor too. We're working on some of those. So, and if they have any questions, they can contact me about the acquisitions at 747-9376.
747-9376.
Correct.
Great. And then Nate?
Yeah, thanks for having me too as well, Mayor. I believe we are having a virtual meeting on October the 1st. Is that correct, Jim, too?
That was our tentative plan, and if we want to go ahead with that, we'll do it.
I believe we want to be as transparent as possible and get the word out, so we need to plan on having that. And then also we'll provide information on that on the website, which is springfieldrailroad.com as well. And then, look forward to continuing to move this project forward, as well as addressing the issues that have come up along the way, definitely along 5th and 6th Street underpasses. So please feel free to reach out to Jimmie Austin or myself. You can reach me at 789-2255. Thank you.
Yeah, a couple of the remaining questions were from the media, so if you would just contact Hanson directly or Nate or myself, feel free to do so. But we really appreciate everybody's participation. It was a one of interest from the number of questions we received. We really appreciate it because this project is important to all of us. As was alluded to, it'll make Springfield safer. It'll help with pedestrian, transportation throughout our city, and improve the, having a quiet zone. So the improvements will transform all our lives. And it's important that we keep the lines of communications open. So it's important, if anybody has a question or a concern, you need to contact directly, like Jimmie Austin at Hanson's at 788-2450. If it's acquisition related, you can contact Steve Warren. Again, that's 747-9376. And then at City, Nate Bottom, especially we hadn't touched on, but we actually had some comments with regards to vegetation growth, trees and shrubbery around the rail. And we'd had to send our public works crew to go out and mitigate that. So his number is 789-2255. So we want to hear those particular items because it's important to all of us. We want to improve the quality of life, and this rail project definitely will do that. So as we've been doing since the middle of March and each and every day, the focus is always treat each other with respect and, and remember when we're out in public, you have to protect one another, wear your mask as much as possible, keep that social distance. And the main goal is let's make today better than yesterday and tomorrow better than today. So I hope you can join us again next week on Wednesday at noon for our Facebook Live. Thank you very much, and thank you for everybody for your participation.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.